Okay, welcome back to the life-changing magic of tidying up. And in this read, we're going to get into Chapter 3. Tidying by category works like magic. Tidying order. Follow the correct order of categories. The door opens with a click, and a woman looks out at me, somewhat anxious. Hello? My client almost seems a bit tense the first time I visit her home. As they have already met me several times, the tenseness stems not from shyness, but more from the need to brace themselves for a major challenge. Do you think it's really possible to clean up my house? There is no place to even put your feet in here. I don't see how I can really tidy completely in such a short time. You said that none of your clients have ever suffered rebound? But what if I'm the first? Their nervous excitement is almost palpable, but I know without a doubt that every one of them will do fine. Even those who are lazy or messy by nature, even people who have descended from generations of slobs, or who are excessively busy, can learn to clean properly if they use the KonMari method. Let me share a secret. Putting your house in order is fun. The process of assessing how you feel about the things you own, identifying those that have fulfilled their purpose, expressing your gratitude and bidding them farewell, is really about examining your inner self, a rite of passage to a new life. The yardstick by which you judge is your intuitive sense of attraction, and therefore there's no need for complex theories or numerical data. All you need to do is follow the right order. So arm yourself with plenty of garbage bags and prepare to have fun. Start with clothes, then move on to books, papers, kimono, which is known for miscellaneous, and finally the things that with sentimental value. If you reduce what you own in this order, your work will proceed with surprising ease. By starting with the easy things first and leaving the hardest for last, you can gradually hone your decision-making skills so that by the end, it seems simple. For the first category, clothing, I recommend dividing further into the following subcategories to increase efficiency. Tops, like shirts, sweaters, etc. Bottoms, like pants, skirts, etc. Clothes that should be hung, like jackets, coats, suits, etc. And then socks and underwear. Bags, handbags, messenger bags, etc. And then accessories, like scarves, belts, hats. Clothes for specific events like swimsuits or kimonos or uniforms, etc. And then shoes. And yes, I include handbags and shoes as clothing. Why is this optimum order? I am actually not sure why, but based on experience, I have gained devoting half of my life to tidying, and I can tell for certain that it works. Believe me, if you follow this order, you'll speed through the work and achieve visible results surprisingly quick. Moreover, because you will keep only the things you truly love, your energy and joy will increase. You may be physically tired, but it feels so good to get rid of unnecessary items that you will find it hard to stop. The important point, however, is deciding what to keep. What things will bring you joy if you keep them as part of your life? Pick them as if you were identifying items you love from a showcase in your favorite store. Once you've grasped the basics, put all your clothes in one heap, take them in your hand one by one, and ask yourself quietly, does this spark joy? Your tidying festival has begun. Now for clothing, place every item of clothing in your house on the floor. The first step is to check every closet and dresser in the house and gather all your clothes in one spot. Don't leave a single wardrobe or dresser drawer unopened. Make sure you have gathered every last piece of clothing. When my clients think they have finished, I always ask them this question: are you sure there's not a single piece of clothing left in your house? Then I add, you can forget about any clothes you find after this. They'll automatically go into the discard pile. I let them know I'm quite serious. I have no intention of letting them keep anything found after sorting is done. The response is usually, oh wait, I think there might be something in my husband's closet. Or, I might have hung something in the hallway, followed by one last dash around the house and a few extra items added to the pile. This ultimatum sounds a bit like the automatic withdrawal system for paying bills at the bank, but when my clients know there's a firm deadline, they search for the memories one more time because they know they don't want to lose clothes without being given a chance to decide. Although I rarely have to follow through on my threat if someone doesn't remember an item at this point, it's obvious. It obviously doesn't inspire a thrill of joy, and therefore I'm quite ruthless. The only exception is clothes that happen to be in the laundry. When all the clothes have been gathered together, the pile of the top alone is usually knee-deep. The term tops include clothing for every season, from t-shirt and camisoles to knitted sweaters. The average number of items in the initial pile is around 160. Confronted by their first obstacle in the tidying process, most people are overwhelmed by the sheer volume of what they actually own. At this point, I usually say, let's start off with season clothes. I have a good reason for choosing off-season clothing, for they're the first foray into this tidying gala. It's the easiest category for tuning into one's intuition concerning what feels good. If they start with clothes they are currently using, clients are more likely to think it doesn't spark joy, but I just wore it yesterday. Or if I don't have any clothes left to wear, what am I going to do? This makes it harder for them to make any objective decisions because off-season clothes are not immediately necessary. It is much easier to apply the simple criterion of whether or not they bring you joy. There's one question I recommend asking when you select an off-season clothes. Do I want to wear this outfit again next time it's in season? Or, to rephrase it, would I want to wear this right away if the temperature suddenly changed? Do I want to see it again? Well, not necessarily. If that's how you feel, throw it in the discard pile or donate it. And if you got a lot of wear out of it last season, don't forget to express your appreciation. You might fear that you'll have no clothes left if you start this standard, but don't worry. It may seem as if you have discarded an awful lot, but as long as you are choosing clothes that give you pleasure, you'll be left with the amount you need. Once you have gotten the knack of choosing what you love, you can move on to each subcategory of in-season clothing. The most important points to remember are these. Make sure you gather every piece of clothing in the house and be sure to handle each one. Loungewear. Downgrading to loungewear is taboo. It seems a waste to get rid of something that is still perfectly usable, especially if you bought it yourself. In cases like this, my clients often ask me if they can keep clothes they know they'll never wear outside and use them as loungewear. If I said yes, the pile of loungewear would grow ever larger without a decrease in overall volume of clothing. Having said that, I admit that I myself once did the same thing with clothes I knew I'd never wear out again. Piled cardigans, outdated blouses, dresses that didn't suit me anymore, I just never wore. It wasn't long before I had developed the habit of demoting clothes like these loungewear rather than discarding them, yet 9 out of 10 times I never wore them. I soon discovered that many of my clients also had collections of dormant loungewear. When asked why they don't wear them, Their answers are very revealing. I can't relax in them. It seems a waste to wear this inside when it's really for going out. I don't like it. And so on. In other words, these cast-offs are not really loungewear at all. Calling them that merely delays parting with the clothes that don't spark any joy. There are stores dedicated solely to loungewear products, and the design, material, and cut are all aimed at relaxation. Obviously, it is a completely different genre from what we wear outside. Cotton t-shirts are probably the only type of regular clothing that could be reused in this category. To me, it doesn't seem right to keep clothes we don't enjoy for relaxing around the house. This time at home is still a precious part of living. Its value should not change just because somebody sees us. So, starting today, break the habit of downgrading clothes and that don't thrill you to loungewear. The real waste is not discarding clothes you don't like, but wearing them even though you are striving to create the ideal space for your ideal lifestyle. Precisely because no one in there is there to see you. Precisely because no one is there to see you, it makes it far more sense to reinforce a positive self-image by wearing clothes you love. The same goes for pajamas. If you're a woman, try wearing something elegant as nightwear. The worst thing you can do is to wear a sloppy sweatsuit. I occasionally meet people who dress like this all the time. Whether waking or sleeping, if sweatpants are your everyday attire, you'll end up looking like you belong in them, which is not very attractive. What you wear in the house does impact your self-image. Clothing storage. Fold it right and solve your storage problems. After the selection process, my clients are usually left with only a third to a quarter of the clothes they started out with. As the clothes they want to keep are still piled in the middle of the floor, it is time to start putting them away. But I go on to that step. However, let me tell you a story. Before I go on to that step, however, let me tell you a story. Just wanted to reread that. I once had a client with a problem that I could just not understand. A woman in her 50s. She told me during our initial interview that she didn't have enough closet space in her house for all her clothes. From the floor plan, however, it was clear not only that she had 2 full closets to herself, but that the closets were 1.5 times larger than average. Although there should have been plenty of space, she also had a clothing stand with 3 rods full of clothes. Amazed, I roughly estimated that she must have more than 2,000 outfits in her wardrobe. It was only when I visited her home that I finally understood. Upon opening her wall-length closet, my jaw dropped. It was like looking at the crowded racks at the dry cleaners. Hanging neatly on the hangers were not just coats and skirts, but also t-shirts, sweaters, purses, and even underwear. My client immediately launched into a detailed explanation of her hanger collection. This is why this type is made especially for knits, so they don't slip off. And these are handmade. I bought them in Germany. After a 5-minute lecture, she beamed at me and said, "Clothes don't get wrinkled if you hang them up. And they last longer too, right?" Upon further questioning, I discovered that she did not fold any of her clothes at all. There are 2 storage methods for clothes. One is to put them on the hanger and hang from a rod, and the other is to fold them and put them in a drawer. I understand why people might be attracted to hanging their clothes. It seems like a far less work. However, I strongly recommend folding as the main storage method. but it's a pain to fold clothes and put them away in a drawer. It's much easier to pop them on a hanger and stick them in the closet. If that's what you're thinking, then you haven't discovered the true impact of folding. Hanging just can't compete with folding for saving space, although it depends somewhat on the thickness of the clothes in question. You can fit from 20 to 40 pieces of folded clothing in the same amount of space required to hang 10. The client described above had only slightly more clothes than average. If she had folded them, she would have had no problem fitting them into her storage space. By neatly folding your clothes, you can solve almost every problem related to storage. But that's not the only effect of folding. The real benefit is that you must handle each piece of clothing. As you run your hands over the cloth, you pour your energy into it. The Japanese word for healing is te-e, 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 which literally means to apply hands. The Japanese word for healing literally means to apply hands. The term originated prior to the development of modern medicine, when people believed that placing one's hand on an injury promoted healing. We know that gentle physical contact from a parent, such as holding hands, patting a child on the head, and hugging, has a calming effect on children. Likewise, a firm but gentle massage by human hands does much more to loosen knots muscles than being pummeled by a massager machine. The energy that flows from the person's hands into our skin seems to heal both body and soul. The same is true for clothing. When we take our clothes in our hands and fold them neatly, we are, I believe, transmitting energy, which has a positive effect on our clothes. Folding properly pulls the clothes taut and erases wrinkles, and makes the material stronger and more vibrant. Clothes that have been neatly folded have a resilience and a sheen that can be discerned immediately, distinguishing them from those that have been haphazardly stuffed in a drawer. The act of folding is far more than making clothes compact, not impact. It is an act of caring, an expression of love and appreciation for the way these clothes support your lifestyle. Therefore, when we fold, we should put our hearts into it, thanking our clothes for protecting our body. In addition, folding clothes after they have been washed and dried is an opportunity to really notice them in their detail. For example, we might spot places where the clothes have frayed, or see certain pieces of clothing is becoming worn out. Folding is really a form of dialogue with our wardrobe. Japanese traditional clothing, kimono and yukata, were always folded in rectangles to fit perfectly into drawers designed to their uniform dimensions. I don't think there is any other culture in the world where storage units and clothing were matched so precisely. Japanese people quickly grasp the pleasure that comes from folding clothes, almost as if they are genetically programmed for this task. How to fold. The best way to fold for perfect appearance. The laundry is done and ready to be put away, but this is where many people get stuck. Folding that seems like extra work, especially as the clothes will be worn again soon anyway. Many people can't be bothered as soon as they have a heap of clothes on the floor. They fall into the daily routine of picking something out of the pile to wear while the mound continues to grow, eventually spreading from one corner to take over the rest of the room. If this describes you, don't worry. None of my clients have ever known how to fold clothes properly when they began taking my lessons. In fact, quite a few of them declared that it was their policy never to fold their clothes. I have opened closets so full that the clothes look like they have been hardened in a jelly mold, and I have witnessed drawers filled with clothes rolled and twisted like a noodle. You would think my clients had never seen the first letter of the word fold, but once they finish my course, all of them, without exception, have told me folding is fun. One of my clients, a young woman in her 20s, hated folding so much that her mother used to come in and do it for her. Through the course, however, she came to love it, and even taught her mother how to fold properly. Once you have mastered this technique, you will actually enjoy doing it every day and will find it a handy skill for the rest of your life. In fact, to go through life without knowing how to fold is a huge loss. The first step is to visualize what the inside of your drawer will look like when you finish. The goal should be to organize the contents so that you can see where every item is at a glance, just as you can see the spine of your books on your bookshelves. The key is to store things standing up rather than laid flat. Some people mimic the store display, folding each piece of clothing into large squares and then arranging them on top of one another in layers. This is great for temporary sales display in stores, but not what we should be aiming for our home, where our relationship with these clothing is long term. To store clothes standing, they must be made compact, which means more folds. Some people believe that more folds mean more wrinkles, but this is not the case. It's not the number of folds, but rather the amount of pressure applied to that causes wrinkles. Even lightly folded clothes will wrinkle if they are stored in a pile because weight of the clothes acts like a press. Think of differences between folding one sheet of paper as opposed to 100 sheets in one go. It is much harder to get a sharp crease when folding a whole stack of paper at one time. Once you have an image of the inside of your drawers will look like, you can begin folding. The goal is to fold each piece of clothing into a simple, smooth rectangle. First, fold each of the lengthwise side of the garment toward the corner. First, fold each length side of the garment toward the center, such as left hand, then right hand side of the shirt, and tuck the sleeves in to make a long rectangle shape. It doesn't matter how you fold the sleeves. Next, pick one short end of the rectangle and fold it toward the other short end. Then fold again. In the same manner, in halves or in thirds. The number of folds should be adjusted so that the folded clothing, when standing on the edge, fits the height of the drawer. This is the basic principle that will ultimately allow your clothes to be stacked on edge, side by side, so that when you pull open your drawer, you can see the edge of every item inside. If you find that the end result is the right shape, but too loose and flappy to stand up, it is a sign that your way of folding doesn't match the type of clothing. Every piece of clothing has its own sweet spot where it feels just right. A folded state that best suits that item. This will differ depending on the suit of the material and size of the clothing. and therefore you will need to adjust your method until you find what works. This isn't difficult, but by adjusting the height when folded so that it stands properly, you'll reach the sweet spot surprisingly easily. Folding goes even more smoothly if you fold thin, soft material more tightly, reducing it to small width and height, and thick, fluffy materials less. In case where one end of the piece of clothing is thicker than the other, it also helps to keep the thinner end in your hand while folding. There is nothing more satisfying than finding the sweet spot, the piece of clothing that keeps its shape when stood on edge and feels just right when held in your hand. It's like a sudden revelation. So this is how you always wanted to be folded, a historical moment in which your mind and the piece of clothing connect. I love the way my client faces light up at that moment. Arranging clothes. The secret to energizing your closet. It feels great to open up your closet and see the clothes you love arranged neatly on hangers. But my client's closets are often such a mess that it takes courage just to open them. And once opened, it's impossible to find anything in them. There are two possible causes. The first is that the closet is simply too full. One of my clients had jammed so many clothes inside that it took her 3 full minutes to extract a single outfit. The hangers were so closely packed that when, after much grunting and pulling, she finally managed to extract out an outfit that the clothes on either side popped out with it like bread from a toaster. Arranging clothes. The secret to energizing your closet. It feels great to open up your closet and see the clothes you love to arrange neatly on hangers. But my clients, their closets are often such a mess that it takes courage just to open them. And once open, it's impossible to find anything in them. There are two possible causes. The first is that the closet is simply too full. One of my clients had jammed so many clothes inside that it took her 3 full minutes to extract a single outfit. The hangers were so closely packed that when, after much grunting and pulling, she finally managed to extract an outfit, the clothes on either side popped out with it like bread from a toaster. I could see why she had not used that closet for several years. This is an extreme example, but it is true that most people store far more than necessary in their closets. This is one reason I recommend folding whatever clothes you can. Of course, there are some types of clothing that are better stored on hangers. This includes coats, suits, jackets, skirts, and dresses. My standard is this: hang any clothes that look like they would be happier hung up, such as those made with soft material that flutter in the breeze, or a highly tailored cut which protests at being folded. These should hang willingly. The other cause of a messy closet is lack of knowledge. Many people simply don't know how to organize clothes on a hanger. The most basic rule is to hang clothes in the same category side by side. Dividing your closet in a jacket section a suit section, and so on. Clothes like people can relax more freely when in the company of others who are very similar to type, and therefore organizing them by category helps them feel more comfortable and secure. You can literally transform your closet just by applying this principle. Of course, many people insist that even when they organize their clothes by category, it isn't long before their clothes are messy again. So let me introduce a secret for maintaining the neatness of closets that you work hard to organize. Arrange your clothes so that they rise to the right. Take a moment to draw an arrow rising toward the right, and then another descending to your right. You can do this on paper or trace them in the air. Did you notice that when you draw an arrow rising to the right, it makes you feel lighter? A line that slopes up to the right makes people feel comfortable. By using this principle, when you organize your closet, you can make the contents look far more exciting. To do so, hang heavy items on the left side of the closet and the light items on the right. Heavy items include those with length, those made from heavier material, and those that are dark in color. As you move towards the right, the length of the clothing grows shorter, the material thinner, and the clothes lighter. By category, coats would be on the far left, followed by dresses, jackets, pants, skirts, and blouses. This is the basic order, but depending on the trends in your wardrobe, what classifies as heavy in each category will differ. Use your intuition to create a balance that makes it appear as if the clothes are sloping to the right. In addition, organize the clothes within each category from heavy to light. When you stand in front of the closet that has been reorganized so that the clothes rise to the right, you will feel your heart beat faster and the cells in your body buzz with energy. This energy will also be transmitted to your clothes. Even when you close the closet door, your room will feel fresher. Once you have experienced this, you will never lose the habit of organizing by category. Some may question whether paying attention to such detail can possibly cause such a change. But why waste your time doubting if incorporating this exciting magic into all your storage spaces could keep your room tidy? It will only take you 10 minutes to rearrange your closet by category. So trust me and give it a try. But don't forget that you first need to reduce your wardrobe to only those clothes that you really love. Storing socks. Treat your socks and stockings with respect. Have you ever had the experience where you thought what you were doing was a good thing, but later learned that it had hurt someone? At the time, you were totally unconcerned, oblivious to the other person's feelings. This is somewhat similar to the way many of us treat our socks. I visited the home of a client in her 50s. As always, we started with her clothes. We moved through her wardrobe at a smooth pace, finished the underwear, and we were ready to start organizing her socks. But when she pulled open her sock drawer, I could not suppress a gasp. It was full of potato-like lumps that rolled about. She had folded the tops to form a ball, and tied her stockings tightly in the middle. I was speechless. Dressed in a crisp white apron, my client smiled at me and said, "It's easy to pick out what I need this way, and it's quite simple to put them away, don't you think?" Although I frequently run into this attitude during my lessons, it never fails to astonish me. Let me state here and now, never ever tie up your stockings. Never ever ball up your socks. I pointed to the balled up socks. Look at them carefully. This should be a time for them to rest. Do you really think they can get any rest like this? That's right, the socks and stockings stored in your drawer are essentially on a holiday. They take a brutal beating in their daily work, trapped between your foot and your shoe, enduring the pressure and friction to protect your precious feet. The time they spend in your drawer is their only chance to rest. But if they are folded up in a balled up or tied up, they are always in a state of tension. Their fabrics stretch and their elastic pull. They're about and bump into each other every time the drawer is opened and closed. Any sock and stocking unfortunate enough to get pushed to the back of the drawer are often forgotten for so long that their elastics stretch beyond recovery. When the owner finally discovers them and put them on, it will be too late and they will be regulated to the garbage. What treatment could be worse than this? Let's begin with how to fold your stockings. If you've tied them up, start by undoing the knot. Lay the toes one on top of the other and fold the stocking in half lengthwise. Then fold it into thirds, making sure that the toes are inside, not outside, and that the waistband protrudes slightly at the top. Finally, roll the stocking up toward the waistband. If the waistband is on the outside when you finish, you've done it right. Fold knee-high stockings the same way. With a thicker material such as tights, it is easier to roll if you fold them in half rather than in thirds. The point is that the stocking should be firm and stable when you finish, much like a sushi roll. When you store the stockings in your drawer, arrange them on the end so that the swirl is visible. If you are storing them in a plastic drawer, I recommend putting them into a cardboard box first, so that they don't slip and unroll, and putting the box into a drawer. A shoebox is the perfect size for stocking divider. This method is a win-win solution. It allows you to see how many stockings you have at a single glance. Protect your stockings from damage and keep them smooth and unwrinkled so that they are easier to put on. And it makes your stockings much happier too. Folding socks is easier. If you folded back the tops, start by folding them. Place one sock on top of the other and follow the same principle as folding clothing. For low-cut socks that just cover the feet, folding twice is enough. For ankle socks, 3 times. For socks and over-the-knee socks. For knee socks and over-the-knee socks, 4 to 6 times. You can adjust the number of folds to achieve the height that best suits the drawer. It is easy. Just aim to make a simple rectangle. The key to folding: store the socks on the edge, so as you did for your clothing. You'll be amazed at how little space you need compared to your potato ball. You'll notice your socks breathing a sigh of relief at being untied. When I see high school students wearing high socks that are loose at the top, I long to tell them how to fold their socks properly. Seasonal clothing. Eliminate the need to store off-season clothes. June in Japan is the rainy season. It is traditionally the month for Koromoe. When people change to summer clothes, this is preceded by several weeks of cleaning and packing away winter clothes and bringing out summer clothes. Whenever this time of the year approaches, it reminds me that I used to do this too, for years. However, I have not bothered to put away off-season clothes. The custom of Koromoe originated in China and was introduced to Japan as a court custom during the Heian period, 794 to 1185 AD. It was only in the late 19th century, when workers and students began to wear uniforms, that the custom was introduced in businesses and schools. Companies and schools officially switched to the summer uniform at the beginning of June and to the winter uniform at the beginning of October. In other words, this rule was only applied when within the organization, and extension to the ordinary home was not really necessary. But like every other Japanese, I too was convinced that I had to store and unpack seasonal clothing twice a year in June and October. I spent 2 months busily emptying and refilling the contents of the closet and drawers. To be honest, I found this custom a nuance. If a dress I wanted to wear was stored away in a box on the top shelf of the closet, it seemed like far too much trouble to get it down and dig it out. Instead, I would compromise and wear something else. There was some years when I didn't manage to unpack my summer clothes until July. And I would realize that in the meantime, I had bought clothes similar to those I already owned. Often, as soon as I got out of my summer clothes, the weather would suddenly turn cold again. The custom of storing seasonal clothes is behind the times. Within the introduction of the air conditioning and heating, our homes are less subject to weather outside. It is not uncommon now to see people wearing t-shirts indoors, even in winter. So, it's time to abandon this custom and keep all our clothes ready to be used year-round, regardless of the season. My clients love this approach, especially because they can grasp at all times exactly what clothes they have. No difficult technique are required. All you need to do is organize your clothes on the premise that you aren't going to put off-season clothes in storage. The trick is not to over-categorize. Divide your clothes roughly into cotton-like and wool-like material when you put them in the drawer. Categorizing by season, summer, winter, fall, and spring, or by activity such as work and leisure should be avoided because it is too vague. If my client space is limited, I have them store only small, specific off-season items, such as bathing suits and summer hats. For the summer season, and muffler, mittens, and earmuffs for the winter season, although not a small item. Winter coats can be put away in the back of the closet during off-season. For those who still don't have enough space, let me share a few tips for storing your off-season clothes. Many people store their off-season clothes in plastic cases with lids. These, however, are the hardest type of storage units to use effectively. Once in the closet, something is bound to be placed on top of it, and pulling the case out and opening it up seems like too much extra work. In the end, it is all too easy to forget the case is even there until the season is almost over. If you're planning to buy storage units in the near future, I recommend that you get a set of drawers instead. Be careful not to bury clothes in cupboards even if they are off-season. Clothes that have been shut up for half a year look wilted, as if they have been stifled. Instead, let in some light and air occasionally. Open the drawer and run your hand over the contents. Let them know you care and look forward to wearing them when they are in the next season. Intention. This kind of communication helps your clothes stay vibrant and keep your relationship with them alive longer. storing books. Put all your books on the floor. Once you have finished organizing and storing your clothes, it's time to move on to books. Books are one of the 3 things that people find hardest to let go. Many people say that books are the one thing they just can't part with, regardless of whether they are an avid reader or not. The real problem is actually the way in which they part with them. One of my clients, a woman in her 30s who worked for a foreign consulting firm, loved books. She had read not only every business book, but also a broad range of novels and manga. Naturally, her room was filled with books. She had 3 large ceiling-high bookshelves full of books, plus about 20 waist-high towers of books piled precariously on the floor. When walking through the room, I had to sidestep and twist to avoid bumping into them. I said to her, what I say to all my clients: please, start by removing every book from your shelves and putting them on the floor. Her eyes grew round. All of them? There's an awful lot. Yes, I know. All of them, please. But she hesitated for a moment, as though searching for words before continuing. Wouldn't it be easier to just choose them while they're still on the shelf and I can see the titles? Books are usually arranged in rows in bookcases so that their titles are clearly visible. So it doesn't seem to make more sense to weed out all those you don't want when you can see them. Not only that, but books are heavy. Taking them off the shelf only put them back on again. Seems like a waste of effort. Even so, do not skip this step. Remove all the books from your bookcases. You cannot judge whether or not the book really grabs you when it's still on the shelf. Like clothes or any other belongings, books have been left untouched on the shelf for a long time, or dormant. Or perhaps I should say they're invisible. Although in plain sight they remain unseen, just like a praying mantis still in the grass, merging with its surroundings. Have you ever experienced that jolt of surprise when you suddenly notice it's there? If you ask yourself, does this spark joy when you are just looking at the things on your shelf or in your drawer, the question won't mean much to you. To truly decide whether you want to keep something or dispose of it, you must take your things out of hibernation. Even the piles of the books already on the floor will be easier to assess if you move them to a different part of the floor or restack them. Just like a gentle shake we use to wake up someone. We can stimulate our belongings by physically moving them, exposing them to fresh air, and making them conscious. While helping my clients tidy their homes or offices, I stand in front of the mound of books they have piled on the floor and clap my hands. I gently stroke the book covers. Although my clients look at me strangely at first, they are inevitably surprised at how quickly and precisely they are able to choose after this. They can see exactly what they need and don't need. It is much harder to choose books when they are still on the shelf, which means you will have to repeat the process later. If there are too many books to arrange on the floor all at one time, I ask my clients to divide them into 4 broad categories. General, books you read for pleasure. Practical, reference books, cookbooks, etc. Visual, photograph collections, etc., and magazines. Once you have piled your books, take them into your hand, one by one, and decide whether or not to keep them or discard each one. The criterion is, of course, whether or not it gives you a thrill of pleasure when you touch it. Remember, I said when you touch it. Make sure you don't start reading it. Reading clouds your judgment. Instead of asking yourself what you feel, you start asking whether you need the book or not. Imagine what it would be like to have a bookshelf filled only with the books that you really love. Isn't that image spellbinding? For someone who loves books, what greater happiness could there be? Unread books sometimes means never. The most common reason for not discarding a book is I might read it again. Take a moment to count the number of favorite books that you have actually read more than once. How many are there? For some it may be as few as 5, while for some exceptional readers it may be as many as 100. People who reread that many, however, are usually people in specific professions, such as scholars and authors. Very rarely will you find an ordinary people like me who read so many books. Let's face it, in the end, you're going to read very few of your books again. As with clothing, we need to stop and think about what purpose these books serve. Books are essentially paper, sheets of paper printed on a letter bound together. The true purpose is to be read, to convey the information to the readers. It's the information they contain that has meaning. There is no meaning in just being on your shelf. You read the book for the experience of reading. Books you have read have already been experienced, and the content inside you, even if you don't remember. So when deciding which books to keep, forget about whether you think you'll read it again, or whether you mastered what's inside. Instead, take each book in your hand and decide whether it moves you or not. Keep only those books that will make you happy just to see them on your shelf. The ones that you really love. This includes this book, too. If you don't feel any joy when you hold it in your hand, I would rather you discard it. What about the books that you have started but not yet finished reading? Or books that you have bought but never started yet? What should be done with the books like these that you intend to read sometime? The internet had made it easy to purchase books, but as a consequence, it seems that to me that people have far more unread books than they once did. Ranging from 3 to more than 40, it is not uncommon for people to purchase a book and then buy another one not long after before they have read the first one. Unread books accumulate. The problem with books that we intend to read sometimes is that they are far harder to part with than ones we have already read. I remember one incident. I was giving a lesson to a CEO on how to clean his office. His bookshelves were filled with difficult sounding titles that you might expect a company president to read, such as classics by authors like Drucker and Carnage, as well as the latest bestsellers. It was like walking into a bookstore. When I saw his collection, I had a sinking feeling, sure enough. When he began sorting them, he put one book after another on his to-keep pile, announcing that they were still unread. But by the time he had finished, he had 50 volumes and had been barely made a dent in the original collection. When I asked why he kept them, he gave the classic answer from my list of most probable answers: because I might want to read it sometime. I'm afraid from personal experience I can tell you right now, sometimes never comes. Sometime never comes. If you missed your chance to read a particular book, even if it was recommended to you or is one of you have been intending to read for ages, this is your chance to let it go. You may have wanted to read it when you bought it, but if you haven't read it by now, the book's purpose was to teach you that you didn't need it. There is no need to finish reading books that you only got halfway through. Their purpose was to be half read. So get rid of all those unread books. It will be far better for you to read the book that really grabs you right now than one that you have left to gather dust for years. People with large books collections are almost always diligent learners. This is why it's not unusual to see many references and study guides in my clients' bookcases. The most commonly left unread in Japan are English textbooks, practical English conversation handbooks for travelers, and useful business English phrase books. Handbooks and guides for acquiring qualifications are often incredibly diverse, ranging from bookkeeping, real estate, computer qualifications to aromatherapy and color coordinating. Sometimes I am amazed at the type of qualifications my clients are interested in. Many of my clients also keep their old textbooks all the way back to junior high and notebooks for practicing writing skills. So if, like many of my clients, you have any books that fall into this category, I urge you to stop insisting that you will use them someday. Get rid of them today. Why? Because the odds are very low that you will ever read them. Of all my clients, less than 50% put such books to use. When they explain why they hang on to them, their answers are all about what they intend to do someday. I'd like to study this someday. I'll study it when I have a little more time. I thought it would be useful to master English. I wanted to study bookkeeping because I am in management. If you haven't done what you intended to do yet, donate or recycle that book. Only by discarding it will you be able to test how passionate you are about the subject. If your feelings don't change after discarding it, then you're fine as is. If you want the book so badly after getting rid of it, then you're willing to buy another copy. Then buy one. And this time, read and study it. Books to keep. Those that belong in the Hall of Fame. I now keep my collection of books to about 30 volumes at any one time. But in the past, I found it very hard to discard books because I love them. The first time I sorted through my library, using a yardstick of whether or not they gave me joy, I had about 100 volumes left in my bookcase. Although this is not excessive compared to the average, I felt I could still reduce. One day I decided to take a closer look at what I had. I started with books that I considered taboo to discard. In my case, first on the list was Alice in Wonderland, which I had read repeatedly since grade 1. Books like this, which fall into one's personal book of Hall of Fame, are simply to identify. Next, I looked at books that inspired pleasure but didn't quite make it into the Hall of Fame. As time passes, the content of the category naturally changes, but these books are the ones I definitely want to keep right now. At the time, one of these was The Art of Discarding, which first opened my eyes to tidying. Although I no longer have it, books that provide this degree of pleasure are also fine to keep. The most difficult ones are those that give you moderate pleasure. Those with words or phrases that moved your heart and that you might want to read again. These are the hardest to discard, although I felt no pressure to get rid of them. I could not overlook the fact that they only gave me moderate pleasure, particularly not when I was pursuing perfection in the field of tidying. I began to search for a way to let them go without regret, and even eventually hit upon what I called the bulk reduction method, realizing that what I really wanted to keep was not the book, but certain information or specific words it contained. I decided that if I kept only what was necessary, I should be able to part with the rest. My idea was to copy the sentence that inspired me into a notebook. Over time, I thought this would become a personal collection of my favorite words of wisdom. It might be fun to read it over in the future and trace the path my interest had led me. With great excitement, I pulled out a notebook I liked and launched my project. I began underlining the places I wanted to copy. Then I wrote the title in my notebook and began transcribing. Once I started, however, I realized that the process was far too much work. It takes time to transcribe, and if I was going to be able to read those words in the future, my handwriting had to be neat. To copy 10 quotations from a single book would take at least half an hour. And that was a low estimate. The thought of doing this for 40 books made me dizzy. My next plan was to use a copy machine. I would copy the sections I would wanted to keep and cut and paste them into the notebook. This, I thought, should be much quicker and easier. But then I tried it, and it was even more work. I finally decided to rip the relevant pages out, so the bulk of the pasting pages into the notebook was also a pain. So I simplified the process by slipping them into a file instead. This only took 5 minutes per book, and I managed to get rid of 40 books and keep the words that I liked. I was extremely pleased with the results. 2 years after launching this bulk reduction method, I had a sudden flash realization I had not ever once looked at the file I created. All that effort just been to ease my own conscience. Recently, I have noticed that fewer books actually increases the impact of information I read. Recognize necessary information much more easily. Many of my clients, particularly those who have disposed of a substantial number of books and papers, have also mentioned this. For books, timing is everything. The moment you first encounter a particular book is the right time to read it. To avoid missing that moment, I recommend that you keep your collection small. Sorting papers. Rule of thumb, discard everything. Once you finish organizing your books, it's time to move on to your papers. For example, the letter holder bursting with envelopes that hang on your wall, the school announcement stuck on your fridge, and the unanswered invitation to your school reunion lying by the phone, the newspapers that have accumulated on the table over the last few days, the several spots within the house where papers tend to pile up like a snowdrift. Although the general assumption is that there are far fewer papers in the home than in the office, this actually is not true. The minimum amount of paper my clients discard recycle is 2 45-liter bags. The maximum so far is 15 bags. I don't know how many times I hear my clients' paper shredder jam. It is extremely difficult to manage such a large volume of paper, yet I occasionally meet some amazing clients whose filing skills take my breath away. Filing skills take my breath away. When I ask, how are you managing your papers? Their explanations are extremely thorough. Papers related to children go in this file. That file there is my recipe file. Magazine clippings go in here, and manuals for my electric appliances go in here. They have categorized their papers in such fine detail that my mind sometimes wanders off in the middle of their discourse. I confess I hate filing papers. I never use multiple files or write labels. This system perhaps works better in office settings, where many people use the same documents, but there is absolutely no need to use such a detailed filing system at home. My basic principle for sorting papers is to throw them away. My clients are stunned when I say this, but there is nothing more annoying than papers. After all, they will never inspire joy, no matter how carefully you keep them. For this reason, I recommend you dispose of anything that does not fall into one of the 3 categories currently in use, needed for a limited period of time, or must be kept indefinitely. Currently in use, needed for a limited period of time, or must be kept indefinitely. The term papers are, by the way, does not include papers with sentimental value like old love letters, diaries. Attempting to sort these will slow you down. Limit yourself at first to sorting papers that give you no thrill at all and finish the job in one go. Letters from friends and lovers can be left for when you tackle sentimental items. Once you've gone through those papers that don't evoke any pleasure, What should you do with the ones that you decided to keep? My filing method is extremely simple. I divide them into two categories: papers to be saved and papers that need to be dealt with, although my policy is to get rid of all papers. These are the only categories I make for those that can't be discarded. Letters requiring a reply, forms that need to be submitted, a newspaper that I intend to read, make a special corner for papers like these that need to be dealt with. Make sure that you keep all of such papers in one spot only. Never let them spread to other parts of the house. I recommend using a vertical organizer in which papers can be stored standing up in a designating a specific place for later. All papers requiring attention can be placed in here without separating them. As for papers that must be saved, these I subdivide according to the frequency of use. Again, the way I divide them is not complicated. I organize them into infrequently used papers and more frequently used papers. Infrequently used papers include insurance policies, guarantees, and leases. Unfortunately, these must be kept automatically regardless of the fact that they speak no particular joy in your heart. As you will almost never need to access papers in these categories, you don't have to put a lot of effort into storing them. I recommend putting them into a single ordinary clear plastic folder without worrying about further categorization. The other subcategory consists of papers that you will take out and look at more frequently, such as outlines of seminars or newspaper clippings. These are meaningless unless they are stored in a way that is easy to access and read, which is why I recommend inserting them into the book-like pages of a clear plastic file folder. This category is the trickiest of them all. Although papers like this are not really necessary, they tend to multiply. Reducing the volume of this category is key to organizing your papers. Papers are organized into only three categories. Needs attention, should be saved, and should be saved. So the point is to keep all papers in one category in the same container or folder and to purposely refrain from subdividing them any further by content. In other words, you only need 3 containers or folders. Don't forget that the needs attention box ought to be empty. If there are papers in it, be aware that this means you have left things undone in your life that require your attention. Although I have never managed to completely empty my needs attention box, this is the goal to which we should aspire. All about papers, how to organize troublesome papers. My basic policy is to discard all papers, but there are always going to be some that are hard to get rid of. Let's consider here how to tackle these. Lecture material. Those who enjoy studying are quite likely to attend seminars or courses in various subjects such as aromatherapy, logical thinking, or marketing. The recent trend in Japan is to utilize time in the early morning to take seminars. The content and time frame are broadening, giving people a wide choice. For the participants, the material digitally produced by the lecture are akin to a badge of honor, and as they are hard to part with, but when I visit the homes of these ardent learners, I find that these materials usurp much of the room, making their space impressive. Usurp. One of my clients was a woman in her 30s who worked for advertising for an advertising company. The moment I entered her room, I felt like I was in an office. My eyes were assaulted by rows of files with carefully printed titles. These are all materials from the seminar I took. She told me, a self-confessed seminar fanatic, she had saved and filed the material from every seminar she had ever attended. People often insist I want to restudy these materials sometime, but most never do so. Moreover, the majority of them usually have material for multiple seminars on the same similar subject. Why? Because what they learned at the seminar did not stick. I'm not saying that this is a criticism, but merely to point out why it isn't worth keeping material from past seminar. If the content is not put into practice, such courses are meaningless. The seminar value begins the moment we start attending. And the key to extracting the full value is putting what we learn there into practice the moment the course ends. Why do people pay expensive fees for such courses when they can read the same content in a book elsewhere? Because they want to feel the passion of the teacher and the experience that learning in that learning environment. Thus, the real material is the seminar itself, and it must be experienced live. When you attend a seminar, do so with the resolve to part with every handout distributed. If you regret recycling it, take the same seminar again, and this time, apply the learning. It's paradoxical, but I believe that precisely because we hang on to such material, we fail to put what we learn into practice. The biggest collection of the seminar material I have come across was 199 files. Needless to say, I heard her discard every single one. Credit card statements. Another thing to discard are all your credit card statements. What is the purpose? For most people, they are simply the means of checking how much money was spent on what during a particular month. So once you've checked the content to confirm that that's correct and have recorded the figure in your household account book, the statement has fulfilled its purpose, and you should discard it. Trust me, you need to feel no guilt at all. Can you think of any other time that you would really need your credit card statement? Do you imagine that you might need them for a court case to prove how much was withdrawn? That's not going to happen. So there's no need to treasure these statements for the rest of your life. The same is true for the notices of withdrawals from your account to pay utility fees. Be resolute and take this opportunity and get rid of them. All of my clients, the ones who had the hardest time disposing of papers were a couple, both of whom were lawyers. They kept asking, well, what if this document is needed in court? At first, they made very little progress. But in the end, even they were able to discard almost all their papers without experiencing any problems. If they can do it, so can you. Warranties for electrical appliances. Whether a TV or digital camera or electrical appliance comes with a warranty, this is almost a standard documentary category in any home, and the one that almost everyone files and saves properly. The method of the organizing, however, is usually almost but not quite right. In general, people save their warranties in a clear folder, files an accordion-style file. The attraction of these files is usually the documents can be stored in separate compartments. However, therein lies their pitfall. Because they are so well divided, it is easy to overlook things. Most people save not only the warranty, but also the operation manual in the same file. First, let's start by parting with these manuals. Take a look at them. Have you ever used them? In general, there are only a few manuals that we actually need to read, such as a computer or digital camera manual, and these are so thick that they won't fit in those files anyway. So basically, any manual contained in your warranty folder can be discarded without causing any difficulty. To this date, all my clients have discarded most of their manuals, including those for PCs and cameras, and none of them have experienced any problems from doing so. If they have a problem, they can usually fix themselves by fiddling with the machine and can find the solution for anything that they can't figure out on their own from the internet or place a purchase. So I assure you, you can dispose of them without any quarrel. Getting back to the warranties, The filing method I recommend is to put all of them in a single clear file, without separating them into categories. Warranties are only used once in a half a year at all. What point is there in carefully sorting and separating them into the odds that will be needed are so low? Moreover, if you file them in a folder, you'll have to flip through the pages to find the right warranty. In that case, it's just as easy to keep them all in one file. Put out the entire stack and search through it. If you sort in too much detail, it means you will have fewer opportunities to look at each warranty. Before you realize it, the warranty will be out of date. If you have this to sift through all of them when you need one anyway, this becomes an excellent opportunity to check the expiration date of the other warranties. This way, you don't have to go through the trouble of deliberately checking the contents just to the expiration date. As often you don't even have to buy the clear file in which you store the warranties, because there is usually at least one already in the house. Finally, this method takes up a tenth of the space of conventional methods. Greeting cards. In Japan, it is the custom to send New Year cards to convey New Year greetings. Many have the lottery numbers at the bottom. This means that each card has fulfilled its purpose the moment the receiver finishes reading it. Once you've checked to see whether the numbers on your cards have won anything in the lottery, you can part with the good card with the gratitude for conveying to you the consideration of the sender. If you save the card to confirm the sender's address for the following year, then only save 1 year's worth. Dispense of those that are 2 or more years. Accept those that spark joy in your heart. Used checkbooks. Used checkbooks are just that, used. You're not going to look at them again, and even if you do, it won't increase the amount of money in your bank, so really get rid of them. Pay slips. The purpose of your pay slip is to inform you how much you have been paid for this month. Once you've checked the content of its usefulness is over. Kimono. Miscellaneous items. Keep things because you love them, not just because. I pull out a drawer in a client's home and discover a strange little box, just waiting to be opened like a tantalizing book that promises some fascinating tale. But for me, there is no excitement whatsoever. I know exactly what I'll find inside. Loose change, hairpins, erasers, spare buttons, wrist watches, parts, batteries that may or may not be dead, leftover medicine, lucky charms, key rings, and the list goes on. I already know what the client's answer will be if I ask these things are in the box, just because. Why these things are in a box, and they'll say just because. Many items within their home are treated in the same way. They are placed, stored, and accumulate just because, without or giving them much thought. I call the category kimono, a Japanese term in the dictionary defined variously as small articles, miscellaneous items, accessories, gadgets or small tools, parts, or attachments. An insignificant person, small fry. It's no wonder people don't know what to do with these things that fall into such a vague and all-encompassing category. Still, it's time to bid farewell to just because approach. These items play an important part in supporting your lifestyle, and therefore they too deserve to be handled one by one and stored properly. Unlike clothes or books, this category includes a diverse range of items, and the thought of trying to organize them may seem daunting. If you deal with them in this proper order, however, this task is actually quite simple. The basic order for sorting kimono is as follows: CDs, DVDs, skincare products, makeup, accessories, valuables, passports, credit cards, etc. Electrical equipment and appliances, digital cameras, electrical cords, anything that seems vaguely electric. Household equipment, stationery and writing materials, sewing kits, etc. Household supplies, expendables like medicine, detergents, tissues, etc. Kitchen goods, food supplies, spatulas, pots, blenders, etc. Other spare change, figurines, and etc. If you have many items related to the particular interest or hobby, such as ski equipment or tea ceremony articles, treat these as a single subcategory. I recommend this particular order because it's easier if you start with more personal items and clearly define content first. If you live alone, you don't really need to worry about the order as long as you do one subcategory at a time. Too many people live surrounded by these things they don't need just because. I urge you to take stock of your kimono and save only, and I mean only, those that bring you joy. Common types of the kimono: disposable. A surprising number of these things are instantly identifiable as disposable without even asking, does this spark joy? I have already pointed out how important it is to relinquish the things that you find it hard to part with. It is equally important when putting your house in order to actually notice the things you have kept for no particular reason. The majority of people are surprisingly unaware of the odds and ends taking up space in their homes. Ooh. Gifts. A plate received as a wedding favor that still sits in the box on top of a china cabinet. A key holder you received as a souvenir from a friend that now lies in your drawer. A set of peculiar smelling incense presented to you by your colleagues on your birthday. What do these items all have in common? They were gifts. Someone important to you used precious time to pick out something and to buy them for you. They're an expression of love and consideration. You can't just throw them away, right? Well, let's consider this more carefully. Most of these gifts remain unopened or have been used only once. Admit it, they simply don't suit your taste. The true purpose of a present is to be received. Presents are not things, but a means for conveying someone's feelings. When viewed from a perspective, you don't need to feel guilty for parting with the gift, just a thank you for the joy it gave you when you first received it. Of course, it would be ideal if you could use it with joy, but surely the person who gave it to you doesn't want you to use it out of a sense of obligation, or put it away without using it, only to feel guilty every time you see it. When you discard or donate it, you do it for the sake of the giver too. Cosmetic samples saved for trips. Do you have a collection of cosmetics samples that have been hanging around for a year or more unused? Many people keep these to use on trips, but they never seem to take the time when they travel, or take them when they travel. I contacted various manufacturers to inquire about the shelf life of these products. The answers were varied. Some only last a few weeks, while others are good for a year. When the quantity is very small, such as a sample, the quality deteriorates faster. To use possibly outdated cosmetics, especially when you are supposed to be enjoying your travel, seem rather foolhardily. Electronic packages. Boxes are surprisingly bulky. Discard or recycle the box. Your cell phone comes in as soon as you unpack it. You don't need the manual or the CD that comes with it either. You'll figure out the applications you'll need through using it. All my clients have discarded these things, yet none of them have ever been inconvenienced by their absence. If you do have a problem, you can always get help from the internet or clerk at the shop where you bought it. It is far quicker to ask a pro for the answer than to struggle to find it through the manual by yourself. Some people have saved the boxes for electrical appliances because they think they can get more money for the appliance if they ever sell them. This, however, is a waste. If you consider the rent and the mortgage you pay, turning your space into a storage shed for empty boxes costs you more than you could earn selling the appliance in your box. You don't need to keep them for moving either. You can worry about finding suitable boxes when the time comes. It's a shame to let a boring box take up room in your house just because you might need it someday. Unidentified cords. If you see a cord and wonder what on earth it's for, chances are you'll never use it again. Mysterious cords will always remain just that, a mystery. Are you worried you might need it if something breaks? Don't be. Have you seen the countless homes with duplicates of the same type of cord, but a tangle of cords just make it harder to find the right one? In the end, it's quicker to buy a new one. Keep only the cords that you can clearly identify and get rid of the rest. Your collection most likely contains quite a few that belong to defunct machines that have long since been discarded. Broken appliances. I often come across broken TVs and radios in my clients' homes. Obviously, there's no need to keep these if you too have broken appliances. See this as an opportunity to contact your local recycler and get rid of them. Bedding for guests who never come. Quilts, pillows, blankets, and sheets. Spare sets of beddings take up a lot of room. This is another common item that gets discarded during my lessons, and again, my clients rarely miss it. Although it's worth having the spare bedding if you have regular guests, it's unnecessary to keep extra sets if you only have overnight visitors at most once or twice a year. Bedding stored indefinitely in the closet often smells so mildewed you wouldn't want to let your guests use it anyway. Take a whiff and see for yourself. Spare buttons. You'll never use a spare button. In most cases, when a button falls off, it's a sign that a particular shirt or blouse has been well worn and loved and now has reached the end of its life. For coats and jackets that you want to keep for long term, I would recommend sewing spare buttons to the lining when you first buy them. For other clothes, if you lose a button and you really want to replace it, you can always get what you need at the large handicraft shops. For my work in the field, I have come to the conclusion that when a button falls off, people often don't bother to sew another one on even when they have kept the spares. Instead, they either keep wearing the outfit without the button or leave it lying around somewhere in their wardrobe. If you're not going to use a spare button anyway, it shouldn't matter that you get rid of them. Product from the latest health craze. Slimming belts, glass bottles for making kefir, a special blender for making tofu, a weight loss machine that mimics the movement of your horseback riding. It seems like a waste to get rid of expensive items like these that you bought by mail but never really used. Believe me, I can relate. You can let them all go. The exhilaration you felt when you bought them is what counts. Express your appreciation for their contribution for your life by telling them, thank you for the boost you gave me when I bought you, or thank you for helping me get a little more fit. Then discard them with the conviction that you are healthier for having bought them. Free novelty goods. A cell phone screen cleaner that came with the soda bottle, a ball pen engraved with your school's name, a paper fan you got at the event, a set of plastic cups won at a fair, glasses bearing a beer company's logo, postage stamps with pharmaceutical companies' names, a folder with just 5 sheets of blotting paper, a promotional calendar still in its tube, a pocket calendar unused even 6 months into the year. None of these are going to bring you any pleasure.
Cauldron, gypsy.
Discard or recycle them without any qualms.
Cauldron, gypsy.
Small change. Make into my wallet your motto. Do you have loose change lying around? A penny or two in the bottom of your purse, a dime in the back of your drawer, a quarter on the table? I always find coins when I'm helping clients put their house in order. The king of Komodo category. Coins can be found in the entrance hall, the kitchen, the living room, the washroom, on the top of the furniture, and inside the drawer. Despite the fact that the coins are perfectly good cash, they are treated with far less respect than paper money. It seems strange that they should be left lying around the house where they are of no use at all. Whenever my clients come across loose change during tidying, I make sure it goes straight into their wallets, never into a piggy bank. Unlike the other categories, you don't need to gather coins from every part of the house. Instead, just pop them into your wallet whenever you stumble on them. If you put them in a piggy bank, you are simply transferring the place where they will be ignored. People who have lived in the same house for a long time are particularly prone to forgetting about their little cache of coins. Frankly, no one I've met who saved pennies without a clear purpose have actually used them. If you are saving coins with a vague idea that it will be nice to see how many of them you can accumulate, now is the time to take them into the bank. The longer you wait, the heavier your cash will be. The more bother to take it to the bank. I have also noticed that for some unfathomable reason, many of my clients start saving coins in bags when their piggy bank is full. Years later during my course, they stumble across a bag bursting with coins in the back of their cupboard. By that time, it is a pungent with a smell of rust and mold. The coins are discolored, and they make a dull clicking sound instead of jingling. At the most, my clients would rather just ignore the bag's existence. Writing this description is hard enough, but to actually see the coins stripped of their dignity as money is heart-rending. I beg you to rescue those forgotten coins wasting away in your home by adopting the motto, "Into my wallet." Sentimental items. The hardest of them all. Your parents' home is not a haven for mementos. Now that you have organized your clothes, your books, your papers, and your kimono, you can finally tackle the last category. Items that have sentimental value. I leave this for you for last because they are the hardest things to discard. Just as the word implies, mementos are reminders of a time when these items gave us joy. The thought of disposing of them sparks the fear that we'll lose those precious memories along with them. When you think about your future, is it worth keeping mementos of things that would otherwise forget? We live in the present. No matter how wonderful things used to be, we cannot live in the past. The joy and excitement we feel here are now are more important. I repeat that. The joy and excitement we feel here and now are more important than the mementos that we have in the past. So once again, the way to decide what to keep is to pick up each item and ask yourself, does this spark joy? Let me tell you about a client of mine who I'll call A. She was a 30-year-old mother of 2 in a 5-member household. When I visited her house for our second session, it was obvious that the number of things in her home had decreased. "You really worked hard," I said. "It looks like you must have gotten rid of about 30 bags worth of stuff." Looking very pleased, she said, "Yes, I did. I sent all my housekeeps to my mother's place." I could hardly believe my ears. She had used the send it to my parents method of tidying. When I first started this business, I actually thought that being able to send things home was a privilege of people who came from large houses in the country. The majority of my clients were a single woman or young mother living in Tokyo. If they asked permission to send things to their parents' house, I said, sure. as long as you do it right away. I never thought anything of this until my clientele expanded to homes in rural towns. When I learned the true state of parents' house, I was forced to retract my rash words. Now I realize that people who have convenient place to send things such as parents' house are actually quite unfortunate. Even if the house is large with rooms to spare, it's not something infinitely expanding fourth dimensions. People never retrieve the box they send home. Once they sent, they will never again be opened. But let me get back to my story. Sometime later, A's mother started taking my course. I knew that if she were to graduate, we would have to do something about the luggage that A had sent home. When I visited the house, I found that A's room had been left untouched. Her things filled the bookcase and the closet, and now there were 2 big boxes parked on the floor. Her mother's dream was to have a space of her own in which she could relax. But even though A had moved out long ago, with her things still enshrined in her room, the only space her mother felt was hers was the kitchen. This seems very unnatural. I contacted A and announced, "You and your mother won't graduate from this course until you have both dealt with the stuff you have left at your parents' house." On the day of her last lesson, I looked extremely happy. Now I can enjoy the rest of my life free from care. She had gone back home and put her things in order. In the boxes, she had found a diary, photographs of old boyfriends, a mountain of letters, and New Year's cards, and more. I was just fooling myself by sending these things I couldn't bear to part with to my parents. When I looked at each item again, I realized that I had lived those moments to the fullest, and I was able to thank my keepsake for the joy they gave me. When I threw them away, I felt like I was confronting my past for the first time in my life. That's right. By handling each sentimental item and deciding what to discard, you process your past. If you stow these things away in a drawer in a cupboard box, before you realize it, your past will become a weight that holds you back and keeps you from living in the here and now. To put your things in order means to put your past in order too. It's like resetting your life and settling your accounts so that you can take the next step forward. Another item that's just as difficult to discard is keepsake from one's children. A Father's Day present with words, "Thanks, Dad." A picture your son drew that was selected by the teacher to hang in the wall in the school hall, or an ashtray your daughter made. If these things still bring you joy, it's fine to keep them, but if your children are already grown and you're keeping them because you think discarding them will hurt your children's feelings, ask them. They are quite likely to say, "What? You still have that? Go on ahead, get rid of it." And what about the things from your own childhood? Do you still keep your report cards or graduation certificates? When my client pulled out a school uniform from 40 years ago, even I felt my heart constrict with the emotions. But it should be disposed of. Let all those letters you received years ago from a girlfriend or boyfriend, the purpose of letting this is fulfilled the moment it's received. By now, the person who wrote it had long forgotten what he or she wrote, and even the letter very existence. As for accessories you received as gifts, keep them only if they bring you joy, pure joy. If you're keeping them because you can't forget a former boyfriend, it's better to discard or donate them. hanging on to them makes it more likely that you will miss opportunities for new relationships. It's not our memories, but the person we have become because of those past experiences that we should treasure. This is the lesson these keepsakes teach us when we sort through them. The space in which we live should be for the person we are becoming, not for the person we were in the past. Photos. Cherish who you are now. If you have been sorting and discarding things in the order I recommend, you have likely stumbled across photographs in many different places, perhaps stuck between books or on the shelf, lying in a desk drawer, or hidden in a box of all odds and ends. While many have already been in albums, I'm sure you have found the odd photos or two enclosed with the letters or still encased in the envelope from the photo shop. I don't know why so many people leave photos in these envelopes, because photos tend to emerge from the most unexpected places when we are sorting out other categories. It is much more efficient to put them in a designated spot, even every time you find one, and deal with them all at the very end. There is very good reason to leave your photos for last. If you start sorting photos before you have honed your intuitive sense of what brings you joy, the whole process will spin out of control and you'll come to a halt. In contrast, once you have followed the correct order of tidying, clothes, books, papers, kimonos, and sentimental items, sorting will proceed smoothly, and you will be amazed by the capacity to choose on the basis of what gives you pleasure. There is only one way to sort photos, and you should keep in mind that it takes a little time. The correct method is to remove all your photos from their albums and look at them one by one. Those who protest that this is far too much work are people who have never truly sorted photos. Photographs exist only to show a specific event or time. For this reason, they must be looked at one by one. When you do this, you will be surprised at how clearly you can tell the difference between those that touch your heart and those that don't. As always, only keep the ones that inspire joy. With this method, you will keep only about 5 per day of a special trip, but this will be also representative of the time that they bring back the rest vividly. Really, important things are not that great in number. Unexciting photos of scenery that you can't even place belong in the garbage. The meaning of the photo lies in the excitement and joy when taking it. In many cases, the prints developed afterwards have already outlived their purpose. Sometimes people keep a mass of photos in a big box with the intentions of enjoying them someday in their old age. I can tell you now that someday never comes. I can't count on how many boxes of unsorted photographs I have seen that were left by someone who has passed away. A typical conversation with my clients goes something like this: "What's in the box?" Photos, then you can leave them to sort at the end. "Oh, but they aren't mine, they belong to my grandfather." Every time I have this conversation, it makes me sad. I can't help thinking that the lives of these deceased would have been that much richer if the space occupied by the box had been free when the person was alive. Besides, we shouldn't still be sorting photos when we reach old age. If you, too, are leaving this task for when you grow old, don't wait. Do it now. You will enjoy the photos far more when you are old, if they are already in an album, than if you have to move and sort through a heavy box full of them. Astounding stockpiles I have seen. There are 2 surprises I frequently encounter when helping clients put their house in order, highly unusual items in sheer number I come across the first and every time. It might be a music machine used by a singer or a latest cooking utensil owned by someone who loves to cook. Every day provides exciting encounters with the unknown. This is only natural, as my clients' interests and professions are extremely diverse. The real shock is when I discover a massive stockpile of a simple item that you would find in any home. As we work, I always jot down the rough volume of different items my clients own, particularly keep an eye on my stockpile ranking from different items because new records are constantly being made. Once, for example, I discovered a huge stock of toothbrushes in a client's home. The record up to that point had been 35. Even the collection seemed large. Perhaps you have a few more than you need. I remarked we enjoyed a little laugh together, but the new record far surpassed the old. This client had 60 toothbrushes arranged in boxes and cupboards under the sink. They looked like a work of art. It's interesting how the human mind tries to make sense of even out the nonsensical. I found myself pondering whether she should go through one a day if she brushed her teeth too hard, or if perhaps she used a different brush for each tooth. Another surprise was the stock of 30 boxes of plastic kitchen wrap. I opened the cupboard above the kitchen sink to find completely filled with an array of what looked like a large yellow Lego block. I used plastic wrap every day so it goes down fast, my client explained. But even if she used one box a week, that supply would last her half a year. Regular size wrap comes with 20-meter rolls. To use one roll a week, you would have to cover 8-inch diameter plates 60 times. Even allowing for rather generous use, just the thought of repeating the action of pulling and tearing plastic wrap that many times would give me carpal tunnel syndrome. As for toilet paper, the record stock as far as 80 rolls. I have loose bowels, you see. I run out very quickly, was the client's excuse, but even if she used one roll a day, she would have a 3-month supply. I'm not sure she could have used up one roll a day even if she spent all day wiping her bottom, and by that time her bottom would have been rubbed raw. It made me wonder whether I should be giving her skin cream rather than a lesson in cleaning. The ultimate record, however, was a stockpile of 20,000 cotton swabs, a cache of 100 boxes with a 200 swab each. If my client used one swab a day, it would take her 55 years to use her supply. By the time she had finished, she might have developed an amazing technique for cleaning her ears. The last swab used on the last day would appear almost sacred. You may find the account hard to believe, but I'm not kidding. The strange thing is that the clients never realized how many items they actually had until they began putting their house in order. And even though they owned a huge stockpile, they always felt as if they didn't have enough, and they were anxious about running out for people who stockpile. I don't think there is any amount that would make them feel secure. The more they have, the more they worry about running out, and the more anxious they become. Even though they still have 2 left, they would still go out and buy 5 more. Unlike a shop, if you run out of something at home, it's not a big deal. It may cause you temporary stress, but it does no irreparable damage. But how should we handle these stockpiles? Although the best solution would appear to be to use them all the items. In many cases, they are past their expiration date and must be thrown out. I highly recommend that you get rid of excess stock all at once. Give it away to friends who need it, or recycle it, or take it to a donation shop. You may think this is a waste of money, but reducing your stock and relieving yourself of the burden of excess is the quickest and most effective way to put your things in order. Once you've experienced the freedom of life with an out surplus stock, you won't want to give it up, and you will naturally stop stockpiling. My client tells me that now life is more fun because when they run out of something, they enjoy seeing how long they can last without it, or trying to substitute other things. It's important to assess what you have on hand and eliminate excess. Reduce until you reach the point where something clicks. Sort by category in the correct order and keep only the things that inspire joy. Do this thoroughly and quickly, all in the one go. If you follow this advice, you will dramatically reduce the volume of things in your own experience and exhilaration you have never known before and gain confidence in your life. What is this perfect amount of possessions? I think the most people don't know. If they have lived in Japan or the United States all your life, you have almost certainly been surrounded by far more than you need. This makes it hard for many people to imagine how much they need to live comfortably. As you reduce your belongings through this process of tidying, you will come to the point where you suddenly know how much is just right. You will feel it as clearly as if something had clicked inside your head and said, this is just the amount I need to live comfortably. This is all I need to be happy. I don't need anything more. The satisfaction that envelops your whole being at this point is palpable. I can call this just right. Just click. Interestingly, once you have passed this point, you'll find that the amount you own never increases, and that is precisely why you will never rebound. The click point differs from the one person to another. For a shoe lover, it might be 100 pairs of shoes. While a book lover might not need anything but books, some people like me have more loungewear than clothes for going out, while others may prefer to go naked in the home and therefore have no loungewear at all. You'd be surprised how many fall into the latter category. As you put your house in order and decrease your possessions, you'll see your true values are. What is really important to you in your life, but don't focus on reducing or efficient storage methods for the latter. Focus instead on choosing the things that inspire joy and on enjoying life accordingly to your own standards. This is the true pleasure of tidying. If you have not yet felt the click, don't worry. You can still reduce. Tackle this job with confidence. Follow your intuition, and all will be well. Follow your intuition, and all will be well. Choose things that spark joy when you touch them. Hang those clothes that will be happier on hangers. Don't worry about throwing away too much. There will come a moment when you know what is just right. If you have read this far, you have probably noticed that in my methods, your feelings are the standard for decision making. Many people may be puzzled by such vague criteria as things that give you the thrill of pleasure or that click point. The majority of methods give clearly defined numerical goals, such as discard anything you haven't used for years, 7 jackets and 10 blouses in your perfect amount. Get rid of one thing every time you buy something new, but I believe this is one reason these methods result in rebound. If these methods temporarily result in a tidy space automatically following a criteria proposed by others and based on their how, you will have no lasting effect unless their criteria happens to match your own standards of what feels right. Only you can know what kind of environment makes you feel happy. The act of picking up and choosing objects is extremely personal. To avoid rebound, you need to create your own tidying method with your own standard. This is precisely why it's so important to identify how you feel about each item you own. The fact that you possess a surplus of things that you can't bring yourself to discard doesn't mean you are taking good care of them. In fact, it is quite the opposite. By paring down the volume that you can properly handle, you've revitalized your relationship with your belongings. Just because you dispose of something doesn't mean you give up a past experience or your identity. Though the process of selecting only those things that inspire joy, you can identify precisely what you love and what you need. When we honestly confront the things we own, they evoke many emotions within us. Those feelings are real. It is these emotions that give us the energy for living. Believe what your heart tells you when you ask, does this spark joy? If you act on that intuition, you will be amazed at how things will begin to connect in your life and at the dramatic changes that follow. It is as if your life has been touched by magic. Putting your house in order is the magic that creates a vibrant and happy life.